As a poet, I'm embarrassed to be asked a question like that because I don't have any more wisdom than anybody else. I have a skill at putting words together, and I have a liking for intercultural study. I also have a love for communicating with human beings and telling them about new verse forms they can write in, new beautiful songs they can make, new psalms of glory, hallelujah they can write each morning. Well, I think it's the good aspect of something that had a bit of a downside to it. I wanted hard to be liked by my parents, who were somewhat distant people. And I was one of these neurotic reactors who had to get straight A's in everything. And this instilled in me habits of discipline and thoroughness. I still have those, although now I do what I want. Insistent the world in besieging, besetting. When solitude calls, a relief will be getting.
You are like the modern day Dr. Seuss.
I take it as a compliment.
Our lives are often filled with worry and chaos as the media propagates one negative story after another, bringing divide and tension within topics such as politics, religion, and race relations. These stories fuel hatred and confusion while people continue to live in fear. Yet through all this negative energy, many are delivering messages of wisdom and hope, encouraging positive change, and that's something I'm aiming to do. My name is Roger Brooks, and I'm hopeful for our future, but we must be the change and not be a spectator in life, looking from the outside in. For as long as I could remember, I've been fascinated by people's stories. Stories speak to us, and since the beginning of time, the human race has prospered by passing down wisdom told through the essence of story. It's a way for people to aspire to become the hero they know they could be, seeing their higher self through the wisdom of others. What started out as a hobby has quickly turned into my life mission, and as I deliver a new guest each Sunday, I'll aim to prompt the questions you may be thinking, and through the power of listening, I'll allow the guest to speak and articulate their points of view in order to give you the headspace you need to realize your own hero's journey. We are one race. We are one people. Help spread the word about American Real, and together, let's make great stories go viral to inspire, enlighten, and empower those we love and the masses we hope to reach. This week on American Real, we bring you Martin Bidney, Professor Emeritus of English and Comparative Literature at Binghamton University. As a prolific author, Martin has published over 20 books on the subject of poetry, including his own original works. He is a veritable archeologist of literature, having unearthed long forgotten and disused forms of poetry, employing them in his own works. Because of his energy and personality, I liken Martin to a modern-day Dr. Seuss. Get ready for an hour-long education as I welcome Mr. Martin Bidney. This is American Real. I am Roger Brooks. My guest today is Martin Bidney.
Professor Emeritus of English and Comparative Literature at Binghamton University. You were born in New York City, where your father, David, was a professor of anthropology and philosophy at Indiana University, and your mother, Evelyn, a practicing physician. You studied classic violin and then took up folk fiddling and singing and became a classical chorister. You received tutoring in Hebrew as a boy and then took Latin and French in high school, majoring in Russian at Indiana, where you received your BA and your MA in Russian at Harvard, and then your PhD in English at Indiana. You taught for 35 years at Binghamton University, writing about 200 articles and reviews, plus 2 books of literary criticism. Since retirement, you have written and published 23 books of original and/or translated verse. Martin Bidney, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here. And look, I'm so excited because when we met was maybe a couple of months ago, and you came in for one of our workshops, and you joined our Live Tribe group, where we asked people to go live on our private Facebook group for 60 seconds a day, every single day. And you have been doing that, and you have been reading your poetry, and you're telling us about you. And I have to tell you, out of everyone that's ever been in Live Tribe, you're so unique, and I receive so much outreach from people saying it's so great to have Martin in the group.
Oh, thank you.
And how have you been enjoying it?
Oh, thoroughly. It's exhilarating. I love to perform. I love being an actor. And I even have a rubbery face that exaggerates all of my facial expressions. This was never a handicap when I was a teacher. People like to be kept awake.
I'm sure. And we're going to get into everything today about all of your writing and your poetry. And it's hard for me because I'm a writer. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around the volumes of books and articles that you've written. But one word comes to mind, and it actually reminds me of what you're doing in the Live Tribe, and that's consistency. Would you say your consistency in what you do has allowed you to put out so much content?
Yeah. You asked me to write my life story, and there were 3 themes at the top. And that means unity, and unity is consistency.
And where does that come from? Did your parents instill that in you? Is it something you developed over time?
Well, I think it's the good aspect of something that had a bit of a downside to it. I think I wanted hard to be liked by my parents, who were somewhat distant people, and I was one of these neurotic reactors who had to get straight A's in everything, and this instilled in me habits of discipline and thoroughness. I still have those, although now I do what I want.
And what's the difference between, say, now, after retirement, versus when you were younger, maybe going through some of these challenges, figuring yourself out? Obviously, time has passed, but what's changed inside of you to allow you to be who you are and expressing yourself every single day?
Well, I would say it was a crisis experience. It was, once again, the good side of something not so great. When I was 59, I got carpal tunnel in both wrists at the same time, and it was horrifying. But I was immediately, I consulted. I'm lucky to have good friends and well-informed. They told me about a Dr. Pasquarelli, he's now deceased, who was featured in Smithsonian Magazine because he knew so much about the nerve problems that afflict musicians. And I'm a violinist, and it turns out that didn't help at all with respect to my nervous system. That just introduced additional tensions into the fact that I was had the wrong computer position, plus the wrong kind of keyboard. You need one that's shaped like a tent, where the two split squares meet at a point up here, and then you turn the button for the height that you want. You need that. You need to have the keyboard below your hands. Gee whiz. I got the scoop from him, and I was told that most of the people who get, and this is rather important, and if I say nothing else, maybe I'll be very glad to have said this, most of the people who get surgery for carpal tunnel in America don't need it. You can cure it almost always by exercises, and I did. you just be quite relentless about it, like this and like this, over and over. Hold it each time for counting to 10. At first, you do it just about all day long, every hour, and then you thin out the sessions.
And what is that for? Just to stretch?
It loosens the tensions that had caused the carpal tunnel problem.
I see.
And
how long did you have to do this for before?
5 weeks. 5 weeks.
Okay.
But during that time, I was forbidden to play the violin because that would mess things up with additional tension. This was the curing time, right? Just for cure. But I was allowed on my new ergonomic keyboard to do a small amount each day. And one day I really just I describe it in a little write-up I did as not just indignant, but almost angry that I couldn't make music. I said, I'm going to make word music. And I sat down at the computer. I had majored in Russian. I took a master's in it, as you pointed out. And I had a love poem memorized. It was called Love. And all it did was, in 14 lines of a sonnet, it was by Vyacheslav Ivanov, turn of the 20th century into the 20th century. He wrote this poem called Love, which just compares love to about 14 different things. And it was so musical that I thought, this would be music if I had translated it correctly. And so I kept this is still my practice, I kept all the rhythms, I kept all the rhyme patterns so far as I could approximate them. I tried to produce very closely analogous harmonies of vowels and of consonants, and when I was done, I took it to the lady who teaches creative writing, Maria Gillen, in our department in English, and she said, do me a dozen of these and I'll print them in my journal.
And this was the start?
That was the start of the whole thing. That was the time when I realized, I can do this.
Wow. What year was this about?
Oh, I'm not too good with numbers, but you can do the math. I was 59, and now I'm 75.
Okay, great. So since that time, you wrote 23...
23 books of verse, yeah. Translated and original, and usually combining the two. And that's where I invented something new. When I translate somebody, I keep the form, and since having learned the form as a good student and apprentice, I show my mentor how much I've learned by replying in a poem of my own that I compose. I did this, for example, I'm not shy, with Shakespeare. And I modestly called the resulting volume Shakespeare.
Which I have a
You
copy
have that
right
over
here.
there?
Yes, I do. So tell us about this. This is Shakespeare.
Shakespeare, okay. The guy on the right is me. I was 34 years old, and that was taken the day before I got married. That's suitable because Shakespeare's theme is his love life. And we look about the same age. Nobody knows exactly when Shakespeare wrote these. So they were published in 1609, but he probably wrote most of them before the turn of the century. He wrote 154, and I wrote 154 replies on facing pages, as if to say, please compare us, not once, but 154 times.
And what type of response have you received from this book?
One of the reasons I'm here is to promote my work, and the implicit premise behind that is not enough. I haven't really known well how to market. Amazon doesn't particularly care to, but they do at least print me, and I hire a typesetter, a formatter, and book cover designer. They're all wonderful people, and they produce for me very professional-looking books. But yes, I'd like more attention to be paid. I think this ought to interest people all over the world. Why wouldn't it?
Absolutely. It's fascinating, Martin. And a book like this, which is looks like over 300 pages, how long would something like this take you to write?
Well, I did it in several stages over a period of a couple of years, but not more than a period of a couple of years. And I was doing many other things at the same time. I happen to be a rapid writer and an endless reviser. So after I've written something quickly, I put it aside, and there's no end to the number of times I'll go back and touch things up. And even things that I've written, I can see where, oh, gee, I could have done this.
Sure. And are you focused on one project at a time, or do you work on multiple projects or books?
Now I'm doing one project generally at a time. I didn't used to be that way. I didn't even used to know what projects I would have. Basically what I did to get myself started, I was so grateful for the gift of being able to write in any meter I wanted, in any rhyme scheme that I wanted, and to create these elaborate, intricate patterns of vowel and consonant harmonies that in a kind of gratitude, this is almost like a Bible story. I said to myself, I'm going to write a poem a day at least until I die, or am comparably incapacitated by other means.
And when did you say that, and how? And
That
you kept
happened when I
promise?
was 61 and retired. So my full-scale career as an original as well as translating poet began at the age of 61. It's a little unusual for a poet's life story. You don't think of old guys as being quite so energetic as that, but we are.
And you have stuck to that, where you're writing a poem every single day.
Oh, I've not only stuck to it, I usually exceed it.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Let's talk about this other book, which is Bliss in Triple Rhythm.
Oh, all right.
Tell us about it.
What I like to do is not be selfish with my formal investigations, and I'm very experimental in seeking out new verse forms because they're all music. And at heart, I'm mostly a musician. Before I ever got interested really deeply in literature, I was spending immense amounts of time practicing the violin. So in order to diversify and make interesting the whole idea of word music, word songs, I started looking around for different kinds of forms. And in this toolbox has 9 tools, and each of the tools is a verse form that's been neglected, underused, or even almost completely forgotten.
So can you give us an example of one of them?
Sure. Let me have the book and I'll
Sure.
give you an example. I call it Bliss in Triple Rhythm because I start out with 3 very simple forms. They're in foot structures that have 3 syllables each instead of 2. Most of us only learn in school about 2-syllable structure forms. We hear that Shakespeare wrote something called the iambic pentameter. And what's an iamb? 2 syllables. La la, la la, la la, la la, la. But what if you had 3? You could write la 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 la. Or you could write la 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 la. Or you could write la 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 la. That's what Homer wrote. So isn't that interesting?
Yes,
Those are my first 3 tools. And then I combine 3s and 2s, because that's what the ancient Greeks and Romans did, in other forms. And I list them all on the cover. 3rd Asclepiadic, 4th Asclepiadic. Let's see, what do we have here? I put a bookmark in one that I thought it would be fun to read. What is this? Oh, this is an amphibrachic tetrameter. The amphibrach is la la la. Okay. Tetrameter means 4 of them per line. So I'm not going to introduce you to one of the more elaborate Greek and Roman forms right now. This is just a simple one, but and you'd think people had been using it for a long time. They don't. But they use it in other countries. Russians like it. Pushkin used it. Lermontov used it. So, in other words, to get new rhythm schemes, to get new stanza forms for us to use today, it's good to be a traveler both in space and in time. Okay? Here we go. Insistent the world in besieging, besetting. When solitude calls, a relief will be getting. When sounds go around him with media rife, the prodigal son had to flee for his life. Though promised the land is our wandering dearer. In quiet the pilgrim to soul can draw nearer. A border to thwart and the Jordan to ford, we're destined ere welcoming temple reward. The strength to instill in our melody making derives from the orientation we're taking. Let weather be riant or tristful. Who cares? Our nature, how changeful the raiment she wears. The heart in its ardor, the carmen auroral. We blissful combine them in dithyramb choral. Be jubilant, people, be joyful, O crowd. Psalm 150, intone it aloud. I speak to a group, but I'm solitude praising. A paradox, true, yet no problem I'm raising. Priest, rabbi, or mullah, we congregants find. Who's praying? Each part of your body and mind. You're never alone as you wander exploring, while windows you're winning and doors are adoring. I like little jokes, wordplay and games. While windows you're winning and doors are adoring, the organs within you unsilent will laud the one whom your solitude hearkens to awed.
That's incredible. That's incredible. So let's break this down a little bit.
You certainly heard the rhythm, didn't you?
I did. I heard the rhythm. So my first question is, before you wrote this poem, what was your theme? What did you have in mind before you were writing this?
Sometimes I have a quite well-defined theme or an idea that can be stated in a sentence, but this one I think is one of those that just arose from a mood. I had the rhythm going in my head. My foot was tapping it out, and I sat down at the computer and he said, let's have it. And the muse or the Houri or the Holy Spirit or the unconscious, or whatever your frame of reference came through.
Yeah. And this happens basically every day for you.
Yes, it does.
So I would have to read this probably 2 or 3 times to comprehend exactly what you're trying to say. But can you just break it down? What are you saying here? What does this poem mean?
In the simplest language, it's like the Psalms of David. It's a glory hallelujah, and it's a thanks for being alive. I actually published an entire book called The Boundless and the Beating Heart. And if somebody said, I'm not really a believer in anything, I'm an imaginer. I use religious terms, and I tell people to read Psalm 150 because that's the one where all the musical instruments are mentioned. That's all it consists of, is a list of the instruments that we're going to play the song in the temple. By temperament, I'm a psalmist. I'm thankful when I get up in the morning. The boundless and the beating heart, especially with coffee, I can feel that my heart is, I can feel what an energy source it is. And then as far as the boundless goes, I wrote another poem called Take a Mouthful of Sky. You're breathing in the sky, and you're breathing it out, and you're exchanging. When you breathe in, the sky is just about endless. That's the boundless. And then you breathe out, and you give back. So taking in and giving back, that's dialogue. My whole life is in that little phrase. Dialogue. Inhaling and exhaling. Self-affirming and self-transcending. Where was I? Yes, The Boundless and the Beating Heart. Actually, it's a tricky little title. You should read it several times, that title. Am I saying there are two things, the boundless and the beating heart? Or am I saying that there's the heart that is boundless and beating?
Okay.
The answer is yes.
Yeah, for both. Sure.
That's a trick I used to use as a teacher when a student would say, is it A or is it B? I would say yes.
Yes, it's both. Now, this rhythm that we're talking about here, are you saying that this type of poetry is not typically written?
It isn't written in English today.
That you know of.
I challenge you to find another example of it. None of my friends is writing this. No writer that I currently see, let's say in the New York Review of Books or in the New Yorker.
And this is just
you never see it.
Okay, and this is just one example of several types or ways to write poetry that are not being used.
Right. All 9 of my tools are sitting in the toolbox unused.
And the one that is being used is what? What are people doing today that's the most common?
Well, I would say that most people write free verse. Almost anything in any poem in the New Yorker is in free verse.
Meaning?
Meaning there's no set meter. I don't like that because I need a beat. When I was it still happens to me that I wake up in the morning and I start beating rhythms on the bed mattress. And my mother tells me that when I would sit on the chair as a really little kid, I would go like this, up, and back, just for the rhythm of it. So I'm not fond of free verse where you don't have a regular beat. And also, once you give up the beat, a lot of times, Rhymes, you can forget about rhymes. However, there is an interesting, it's almost like the return of the repressed in rap music. I went to a reading just last night, or Thursday night, and there was a fellow who was writing in the rap style with syncopated rhythms and rhymes all over the place. It's as if they come back in floods to, because they're so scanty in free verse. That's quite an interesting development. So yes, I would say that that's, I think, the minority position in writing that's done in creative writing classes. In general, I would say that free verse is compulsory, if you'll allow me to say it that way.
I see. So is your mission to get this out, to get people to realize that there's so much more in poetry than we understand?
Yes.
That's how I see it.
Yes. Yes.
So I write poetry, and I'm obviously free verse. I mean, so if you told me that I had to write a poem about our conversation today, I would think about it, I would have an idea, a theme, and then I would write it, I guess, free verse. There would be no set tool,
Right.
for me to do so. So you're saying that's what most people do?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
I have nothing to add to that. That was perfectly summed up.
Thank you. So okay, let's keep going. So you're writing books. I can't believe the volume here. This is just incredible. But I also think about your music background, that has to have played a huge role into this. If you're waking up, tapping on the bed, and as a kid, it's in your mind, it's in your brain that there's this rhythm, whether it's music or word, right, that you're expressing.
Yeah. Yeah. Music is the best parallel, and you think maybe open a poetry book and you're not accustomed to seeing this kind of outpouring, but if you open it, think about the lives of the composers, think what Mozart wrote. I've written several poems about Mozart. I like him because he just never stopped. The guy never stopped. And I wrote one poem about, I had 3 violin teachers, and they all each one of them assigned me a different concerto by Mozart. They were all 3 equally beautiful and wonderful for teaching techniques and filled with great tunes. And the one that I wrote my poem about is the goofiest one, which is most indicative of exuberance. And by the way, etymology, one of the great source books for my poetry, is the etymological dictionary on the internet. You just look up any word you want and then write etymology, and you get the complete history. And exuberance means you need milking. Uber is a breast. Overfull of milk, that's what you are when you're exuberant. And so I like the idea of overflow, and when it came time for me to write a poem about Mozart, I picked the D major violin concerto because it begins with a trumpet theme, which is heard and then never heard again. Dum 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 oh. Beautiful, isn't it? He dropped it. He had too many other things to do. And this is a man who is not sloppy. He's famous for having the complete form of a quartet in his head so that he could write out the one part and write the parts in order because he had the totality in his head. So this is a man who's not shy in terms of planning devices, but sometimes he's just overpowered. And I just often feel I will take what happens to me.
Sure. Let's talk about when you were young. You were obviously extremely intelligent. What were your teachers saying to you when you were going through school? What were your professors saying to you when you were in college? Did you know you were gifted?
Not in poetry, no. Nobody ever encouraged me to write poetry.
You really weren't writing poetry then, right?
I never wrote it. No,
Okay.
I didn't think I could write it. I think one of the enemies was, why should I pin blame on anybody? I've written a poem called The Neg Nag. That's my chief enemy in life. Nagging negativity. Sometimes if you don't know what else to do, you might start giving a little speech to yourself about something you don't like. And when that happens to me, I stop in the middle and I say, why? Why am I doing this? For whose benefit? So no, I don't want to talk about that. But no, I was not encouraged. I was encouraged, though, to think about the transcendent importance of poetry by one teacher that I had. His name was Erich Heller. Heller is quite a celebrated critic. He was a Catholic and gay and complicated individual and an exile from Hitler's Germany. And so he got me interested in poetry because partly on account of the Catholic faith, which with difficulty he was struggling to preserve, he was convinced that the poets of our century had done work of immense spiritual importance. Rilke he introduced me to as, well, Rilke I think many people would say is the greatest German-speaking poet of the 20th century. And I've translated 2 of his books with replies, partly because I had to come to terms with Rilke. It was, in the opinion of Erich Heller, a question of saving your soul or not.
So when you're translating these poems, are you trying to put them into terms that the average person could understand? You're deciphering what he's trying to say, just like I asked you what you're saying here.
You mean in the replies?
Yes.
I often do that.
Okay.
That play the role of a professor.
Right.
Explain. That's particularly useful in Shakespeare's sonnets when he's not 100% super clear.
Yes.
You say, now, here's what I think is going on here. There are 3 themes, and frankly, I don't think they get along too well. I do that in one of my replies. That's one of the things I most love to do in a reply. But it's not the only thing, because I invented this, and I can define it any way I want, and I can do anything I choose in a reply.
Isn't that nice that we have that freedom?
Yeah.
And so, obviously, it's your interpretation of, say, Shakespeare, right? Do you have a good feeling or a good handle on if it's probably what he was trying to say?
Now, one of the most fascinating things about the Shakespeare sonnets is we know almost nothing about them. We don't know why they were suddenly published in 1609. We don't know who did the publishing. And Shakespeare creates characters in this book. It's really one of his best dramas, except that it doesn't have a lot of unity. In fact, it gets nowhere. And now, with sonnet 154, we're really deep in a quagmire, and we're not going to get out of it soon. He creates his own characters, and they're exciting characters. Do I have a grasp of it? I'm entitled to have as much of a grasp as anybody, because we don't know who these people are, and we only find out their relationships by reading the poems. I read English, let's go. And so I try to figure it out. Many things are super clear. In the first 49 poems, he's talking to his boyfriend, and he's saying, pay it forward. You're so beautiful. You're so attractive and likable, and you have so many lovable traits. Do you want to die without progeny? Why don't you get married and have some kids, please? Do it. And he says this 49 times. I'm amazed at this. It's almost as if one of the things we're getting here is a most uncommon kind of psychological novel. When you say Shakespeare sonnets, you think, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? You've heard that?
Oh, sure.
That was written to the boyfriend, not the girlfriend. Shakespeare's love life is a lot more complicated than most people realize, because frankly, you're getting censored versions all your life. You go through school and they give a few poems from here and a few poems from there, and I bet I'm telling you something new when I tell you that this comes right in the section where he's lecturing his boyfriend about something or other. And then once a woman enters in Sonnet 40, guess what? The boyfriend has been romancing her first, and for some time. And now they're both in love with the same woman, and what's he going to do about that? I won't call him Shakespeare, but who is our speaker, our narrator? What's he going to do about that? And later on, he doesn't want to give up the boyfriend. In fact, later on, there's a new problem arises when another poet comes along and is writing love poems to the same boyfriend. So there are 2 triangles, right? two triangles, and there's no resolution about it. And one reason there isn't is that Shakespeare doesn't stick to his love life. He's got too many other interests. His love life reminds him of this or that, the problem of immortality, the change of the seasons, the coming of age. He talks about anything he wants. So we talk about anything we want. And one thing I love to do, since I did teach literature for 35 years, and I love to read, I've got lots and lots of people I can compare this or that poem with. And if you look in the book, you'll find a copious index of people I refer to.
Awesome. Awesome. Incredible. Just
One thing very interesting, and that is that I like to keep my commentary up to date. And Shakespeare is quite a gender bender in his love life. And there's one point where he addresses his boyfriend as master mistress. And in my replies, I talk about this gender receptivity and inclusiveness, which is very remarkable in this poem. And in fact, he had to put up with censorship. A critic, let's see, this published in 1609, from 1620 to 1660, the only available edition of this was an edition put together by somebody who changed all the masculine pronouns in the love poems to feminine because he thought that was more proper.
Wow. And then then it changed back at some point?
Oh, absolutely, it's changed back. You will never find that. You have to read up the history of reception of this book to even learn about that guy in the 17th century. He does not merit being remembered.
Sure. Where do you stand from the standpoint of religion? I know some of your books, like if you could explain what this book is about. And then I'd just like to get into, we've had an offline discussion about religion and your thoughts on that, because I think it's really important to express it.
Well, it's easy to explain my religion. I don't really have a religion insofar as I have something approaching one. I already gave you the phrase, the boundless and the beating heart. It's gratitude for breathing and gratitude for writing heartbeat poetry with beats to it. Beats, yes? Yes, beats. And then that's it. So what am I if I'm not a believer? Guess what? I'm a poet. And what is a poet? What's the job description? An imaginer. I'll imagine myself into any religion you like, and I happen to have liked imagining myself into at least 3 of them. I was raised Jewish, and then for 35 years I studied poets of mostly Christian background, and I wrote a book called Blake and Goethe, my 2 favorites. They were religiously very heterodox, but coming from Christian backgrounds. And then after I retired, I got really interested in Islamic religion. And this book was the main thing that headed me in that direction, and I can talk about that book. But now, is it clear where I stand on religion?
Absolutely.
I don't stand on religion.
Yes.
I don't have beliefs. I look at the etymology. Remember etymology of the word belief, and it's related in root-wise to the word love. To believe something is to be attached with your heart to that thing, and not to maintain that a particular proposition or assertion is either objectively true or false. That has nothing to do with poetry or with imagining, or from my point of view, either with the heart. Okay, so this book, this got me started on learning about Islam. It's called West-East Divan. A divan, nowadays it means a sofa. It got that name from the people that would sit on the sofa, the counselors. Actually, in its meaning in Persian, it means an assembly, a collection. And that can be an assembly not just of people, but of poems. So West-East Divan means West-East collection. And this book got started, this is by J.W. von Goethe. Goethe is Germany's greatest poet. He wrote Germany's greatest dramatic poem. It took him 60 years to complete it. It's called Faust. And we have a Goethe Street in Binghamton in honor of this man. Okay, that's Goethe. How did he get interested in Islam? It's West-East. and the east part is Islam. How did he get interested in it? Well, it happened that in 1814, the very first translation of the Divan, or collected works, anthology, by Hafiz arrived on the German scene. It was a translation into German, and that was the first language Western language it had ever appeared in, and Goethe got hold of a copy, and he fell in love with it. Now, Hafiz is a very interesting poet. I've since done a book of translations of Hafiz from the German edition that Goethe used, because I don't know any Persian, and how nice it was that what Goethe fell in love with was not the original Persian, but a German edition, superbly done by Josef von Hammer, who is not highly thought of in Germany today. So one of my life missions is to get him recognized as one of the world's great metric specialists, because there's a variety of meters that you never dreamed of. That helped enliven me to the variety of metric forms that exist in this wonderful world of literature. But in addition to that, he interested Goethe in his tradition. And the thing about Hafiz is he's a Persian medieval pub poet. And that's very interesting in view of the generally negative attitude toward wine that you find in the Quran. But you have to realize that Islam is just like Christianity or Judaism. It changes hugely depending on what country you're in. Today, Islam in Arabia has very little in common with Islam in Indonesia. Well, so the Islam in Persia did not preclude, what should I say, tavern-haunting poets. My book of Hafiz was called Poems of Love and Wine. And they mostly take place in a tavern. And wine is accepted by Persian poets, especially in the Middle Ages, especially in the Sufi mystical tradition, as an emblem of ardor, of the love, of any kind of love for a human, love for a woman or a man, or for God himself. And there's this wonderful tradition which Goethe uses in this book, in the one poem that I marked here, where he applies this in English. He too wrote a poem of love in which it's very difficult to distinguish God and the lady. Nice. Would you want me to read that?
Please.
You in 1,000 forms yourself may hide, yet all beloved I acknowledge you. Covered with magic veil you may abide, all present one, yet I acknowledge you. In young pure striving of the cypress trees, all beauteous grown, straight I acknowledge you. When the pure channel waters flow with ease, then, all alluring, I acknowledge you. When climbing high the water jet outspreads, all playful, gladly I acknowledge you. When clouds reshaping raise their heaven heads, all manifold, there I acknowledge you. On vale beflowered with meadow tapestry, all color starry, I acknowledge you. When myriad grasping ivy arms I see, oh, all surrounding, I acknowledge you. When morning kindles on the hills and downs, all clear, serene, I greeting send to you. And when above the heaven softly rounds, all heart expanding, I am breathing you. What I with outer sense and inner know, you, all instructive, I but know through you. And when through Allah's 100 names I go, from every one an echo name for you.
Wow.
Now, in a Western tradition, that is one shockaroo of a poem, because you only learn in the last 2 lines that he hasn't been talking to God. He's been talking to his girlfriend. So that got me very interested, and I translated this whole divan in the dialogue style, which means that for all the 240 poems of his, there had to be 240 of me, and that's why it's a kind of a fat book.
Right. So I have to ask you, you're obviously not doing this, you're doing this because you love
That's the reason.
doing this. That's the only reason, right?
The only reason.
But I think you and I both know, even if it's not today or tomorrow or 2 years from now, to me, this right here will become important in our history.
Actually, this book is something of an exception in my output. It was not published by Amazon with its limited marketing skills. It was published by State University of New York Press, and also my German teacher, who's 93, but very energetic and active, had a hand in promoting it. And as a result, believe it or not, this book sells on the average of 40 copies every year.
Great.
That may not be huge. That's not what most people call a bestseller, but for what's often labeled an academic textbook, that's not bad.
Sure.
So you are right, and your prophecy is beginning to happen.
Well, I could just see that. Look, from the first day I heard you recite a poem, I said to you, you are like the modern day Dr. Seuss. And you took that as a compliment.
I take it as a compliment, absolutely.
Yeah, but I mean that in all sincerity. I mean, the passion that you put into not only the writing but then reciting of it, you could just feel it, and it's to me it's beyond the volume. And this is nothing. This is 3 of 23, and I'm sure you have at least 1 or 2 on the way.
Oh, there are more than a dozen on the way.
Yeah, so this is endless, but the content that you're putting out is wonderful, and I just know if you get with the right marketing person, this will get out to the masses. But regardless, it's going to happen. Again, whether it's 2 years from now or 20 years from now, I'm just honored to be sitting here with you talking about this, because it's just incredible.
Well, I couldn't be more grateful.
It's just incredible.
I could offer 1,000 thanks. That's what they do in Persia, or 1,001, which is preferred in Arabia. The cultures have their preference, respectively, for either odd or even numbers. And in fact, in the Quran, there's actually one of the verses that begins, "I swear by the even and the odd." There's something about those cultures.
Sure. So with all of your study on Islam and Christianity, you grew up Jewish, speaking Hebrew. Why, in your opinion, why has there been over thousands of years so much fighting, so much turmoil over religion? Why can't people who have their religion, whether it's Islam or Christianity or Judaism or Buddha, whatever it is, why can't they to me, it's just like your culture. Okay, I'm Italian, and my father's Russian, and some people are Mexican. To me, it's like, okay, that's what you are, and it's okay. Why is there the fighting?
Well, I think the answer may be found in a very simple and embarrassingly blunt form, in a book that Islam, Judaism, and Christianity all accept as valid for its spiritual depth and wisdom. The Bible. All right, no sooner do we get Adam and Eve on stage than we have Cain and Abel. So my feeling about the fights involving Christians, Jews, and Muslims is that we have here brothers killing each other. And that's been going on for a while. It's very widespread, isn't it? Brothers killing each other. And doesn't it happen all through the Bible? Jacob and Esau. I could come up with more examples if I had thought about it this morning.
No, but I get your point, and it's so true. But to me, it's so trivial. At the end of the day, I mean, it's. And look, I'm not talking about.
It is trivial. It
right?
is trivial.
Yeah, but think about the Crusades in the Middle Ages, and then the as time went on, the big wars, and
Oh, it's horrible. And it's also a distortion of the scriptural books, because in the Quran, which I would recommend everybody read the Christian, Jewish, and Islamic scripture. In the Quran, God says about the Jews, he says, "And I gave to them the Torah for a guidance and a light." And 2 verses down, he says about the Christians, "And I gave to them the gospel for a guidance and a light." And all the way through, he says he wishes to preserve and orders everybody and suggests that in every way we preserve the valid spiritual heritage of all of those who have gone before us. And Allah himself says he sends out emissaries to all the nations. In fact, in my Life Tribe 21 reading this morning, did you hear it yet? I talk about what the Quran adds to improve the story of Moses in the Exodus, adding a brand new character, I think one of the great characters in world literature not mentioned in the Bible, the Pharaoh's wife. The Pharaoh's wife, whose name was Asiya, was thrilled when she saw baby Moses for the first time. She said, let's make him our son. He may comfort us in our old age. She was a second mother. My theme was mother to Moses, and I think this may have stimulated Moses when he grew up and saw how badly Pharaoh was treating. This influenced her, Asiya, when she saw how badly Pharaoh was treating Moses and his people, to stand up to Pharaoh and give him a mouthful and tell him that she wished she might never see him again, and she was praying to God, the God of Moses and the only true God, that she be given a place in Eden and never have to look at the Pharaoh again. And the Muslims believe that she, in fact, was taken up into heaven. The Pharaoh's wife in heaven. And Pharaoh's wife set such an example for the Pharaoh also that when he was facing death was 1 minute away as he was drowning in the Red Sea, he embraced the God of Moses. So we've got two converts in the story. Isn't this astonishing?
Yes, it is.
Imagine if you were 10 years old and you had read something about, you had some Bible stories that you liked either in the Hebrew or the Christian scriptures, and your parents said, I'm going to give you a new book today. Where you're going to meet many of your favorite characters, and they're going to undergo entirely new adventures. What do you think of that?
Yeah. So do you think it's ignorance? What is it that, so you've been open to broadening your interpretation of these different pieces of work, the Bible, the Quran. Most people don't do that. Why?
Well, you know what comes to mind first for me to say is that as a poet, I'm embarrassed to be asked a question like that, because I don't have any more wisdom than anybody else. I have a skill at putting words together, and I have a liking for intercultural study, and for I also have a love for communicating with human beings and telling them about new verse forms they can write in, new beautiful songs they can make, new psalms of glory, hallelujah they can write each morning, and how they can learn about all different sorts of cultures and go there and be in that culture and imagine everything. Basically, I'm a positive-minded person.
Yeah, no, and I was just going to say.
So that weakens my skill as an analyst of various negative syndromes.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
I don't know if I can just right here come up with anything valuable to say. But ignorance is surely a huge part of it. Because as you say, if people don't read these scriptures, what are they going to know about them?
Sure. No, and that's a great example that we need to open our minds. We need to be willing to see what else is out there. Mm-hmm. Instead of
I have friends who are members of various religions, not even believers in them, but raised in them, and they will not read the scripture of the other two Abraham descended religions. I don't know how far they've gotten in Confucianism and the Hindu Vedas.
Yeah.
That, by the way, is very interesting, and I have translated an entire book of poetry by Confucius via the version presented by a very gifted German metrist who himself got all of his poems simply from prose versions of a Latin missionary. I don't care where things come from. If they're beautiful, I'm going to try to remake them.
Love it. Love it. Well, what are you working on currently? Can you tell us about your new projects?
Well, I'm going through my 9 tools, and I'm writing a book for each tool.
Very cool. Where are you in the process?
I'm in the process right now of beginning a new book. I have written the first 18 poems, and they are all. I'm calling the book "Book of the Heaven 11," and the rhythm is and 1 and 2 and 3 and a 4 and 5 and. No, is that right? No, and 1 and 2 and a 3 and 4 and 5 and. That's different. And 1 and 2 and a 3 and 4 and 5 and. Or, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And that's it. There isn't a weak syllable at the beginning. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I call it the Heaven 11. It's interesting. It's got a 3 in the middle of all the 2s. And why? How do I know that I can make beautiful music out of it? Well, for one thing, I did it already in this book. But there was a Roman poet named Catullus who made a whole career out of what I'm now calling the Heaven 11.
Forgive me if this is a stupid question, but how did you figure this out? How did you figure out that there were 9 that aren't being used today?
Well, I scouted around, and the key to becoming a meter archaeologist and resurrecting ancient forms is the modern 21st century computer. You can get rhythm scansion charts, rhythm diagram charts on the computer. And the best way to do it is to look up the forms that Horace, the Roman poet, used in his odes, because there never was more of a lover of Greek culture than Roman Horace. He just thought they excelled the Romans in every way, and the best thing we can possibly do as good Roman poets is to copy everything they discovered. Therefore, he uses the Roman forms. And if you just go through all the different rhythm patterns in Horace's poems, you get a lot of glorious Roman forms, which are actually Greek in origin. And they can use them. Once you find, you can select. And also you can look through Horace's odes and just see which ones appeal to you. You have to find one that's translated into meter if your Latin isn't altogether first class. And so I found one in German which is faithful to everything.
Wow. Do you think there's more than 9 that
Oh,
exist?
absolutely, absolutely. Okay. That's an arbitrary choice.
Okay.
There's nothing sacred about the number 9, and there could be double that many.
Okay. Do you feel you're the foremost authority on understanding at least this in our country?
Well, the only claim I can make is that I make more use of them than anybody else in the country in writing original verse.
Yes.
And that's not hard for you to understand, who immediately turn to free verse as the automatic, I won't say compulsory, but automatic choice.
Yeah.
That's the automatic choice with most people. So yes, I might be the most familiar in terms of practical use with all 9 tools today in the country. I wouldn't be surprised at that. There's no greatness in that. You can write good or bad poetry in these meters.
Sure.
My German teacher sent me a book of poems by the greatest Polish poet, Mickiewicz. It looks like Mikowicz when you read it on an English page. Mickiewicz wrote 18 sonnets called Crimean sonnets, and in a way, even earlier not earlier, a little later than with Goethe. That got me interested in the Middle East also, because Crimea in the 1790s, when Mickiewicz was sentenced there for being a Polish rebel against the Russian Tsar, it was mostly a Muslim country. And so the Catholic imagery he grew up with and the Voltairean thinking he acquired at college had to blend with all this Islamic input that was coming in. So what happened was my German teacher sent me this as a present, thinking I'd be interested in the multilingual aspect because it was in Polish, French, and German. German and French renderings of the Polish. And I looked at that and I said, where's the English? And it took me 2 minutes to decide I will provide the English. And I did that because I took a year of Polish during my work for the masters in Slavic at Harvard, and I knew enough Polish to translate 18 poems if I took my time over it, though I have a native speaker here to advise me, Barbara Pollux, and she saved me from error. But they're wonderful poems, and you're reading about this Polish poet talking about Islamic lore. So yes, that was a little Polish book. To lengthen it, I not only published my replies, 18 poems, 18 replies. And then I wrote a preface in sonnets also to double the length of that. And then I wrote notes with more poems in them. So we managed to make it a respectable book with the colors of the Polish flag on the cover and a picture of Mickiewicz looking as if he just got out of a pop group band.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So Martin, if I were to ask you to take out your cell phone and call the 20-year-old Martin, what advice would you give?
Oh. You know, I'm not so good at imagining that. Maybe I'll tell you something that relates closely to it, okay? One of my books that we didn't talk about is bilingual, and I co-wrote it with a guy 40 years younger. Somewhat like a 40-year younger self. He is interested, the only other person that I met in my life who's just as interested in old meters, or was at that time, as I. I got acquainted with him because my German teacher sent me a copy of a literary journal from Germany so I could see what the poets were doing over there. I didn't like anything in the journal except for one poem that was written in an ancient Greek meter, and I realized that I'd never seen this in modern times. Not in the 20th century, certainly, and he did it perfectly, just perfectly, and it was original and by him. So I said to my German teacher, this is an astonishing thing, and I explained why. She said, do you want me to put you in contact with him? So I said, absolutely. And so she gave me the address, and I wrote him an ode of tribute in English, and he translated it into German and wrote a German ode in reply. And I translated that German ode and wrote an English ode in reply. And we did this 75 times for over 2 years, and we published it. That's another book.
That's incredible. What's that called?
It's called A Treat Not Known Before. I said that in conversation one day, and he said, that's our title.
Wow. Awesome.
He's given up writing in these ancient meters. He thinks that's a stage in his life, and now he'll have another.
Okay.
And he's shown me the latest ones. They're not metrically adventurous. He's interested in other things now.
Sure.
So I'm not going to meet another, which we say, a kindred spirit or soul brother of this kind.
Yeah.
But we did have fun. And
Sounds
you
like
do
it.
see conversation between youth and age. He's very idealistic and union with nature. And I write about bifocals. And I said, what's this nature that I'm supposed to unite with? I can barely see it. I said, nature seems to be withdrawing. Nature seems to be, part of a plot to distance me from things. Maybe this is a very good idea. I'll distance myself from the near and essential. I'll draw myself close to the near and essential and far away from the far and inessential. And become a Buddhist this way, because after all, nature via bifocals is teaching me that. And I have to learn to look at things from two different perspectives. Yeah. And thanks to Ben Franklin, who invented bifocals, I can do that. And he had a wonderful sense of humor, too.
And so do you.
Thank you.
What do you think our purpose is here on this earth?
Well, I like the Aristotle tradition. He was the son of a doctor, and he looked for organic metaphors for what counts. And he said the acorn loves to become an oak. So he was the first ethical theorist of self-realization. Be who you are. Unfold your potentials. Find out what you're good at, and then, just like the flower, in obedience to your inherent growth principle. He thought everybody had a growth principle within them, as the oak has, or the acorn has, while it is unfolding as the oak to be. Growth principle, he called it entelechy. So the entelechy or growth principle is within you. Let it unfold and become yourself. And he said the way to do this is a tree is a balanced structure. Maintain a balance in your the qualities. Avoid on the one hand the excess, and on the other the deficiency. This is not the totality of ethics. This I think I would combine with the romantic drive toward intensity. People like Blake and Byron among English poets, I love them because of their just intense drive, everything to the limit. Test out the limits. Blake said in one of his so-called Proverbs of Hell, designed deliberately to fight with the biblical book of Proverbs, which he thought was too dowdy and frowsy and old-fashioned. He says, you never know what's enough until you know what's more than enough. And that's the principle of science, right? You test out a hypothesis to the limit. So first I write a book with the 9 tools, and then I go through the tools one by one and see how far I can get with each of them.
I love that. And what advice do you have for young people, maybe even not so young people, who have not been able to express themselves or be themselves? They're still living behind that mask, if you will. What advice do you have?
Fight diffidence. Diffidence is the opposite of confidence. Confidence is the key to life. You know, when Moses asked God to define himself or who he was, God just said, I am what I am. And I am is the principle of life. So in order to find out who you are, I already suggested that, unfolding your growth principle, you have to have confidence in that growth principle. I have something valuable inside me that is wanting to expand. If you don't believe that, you won't get anywhere. That is called confidence. And the opposite of it I don't hear too often, that is diffidence. But that's the name of the devil, diffidence.
Have you always had this confidence?
No, I can't say so. I think I had it in limited degrees. When I was studying the violin, I really did think that I could excel as a violinist. I even thought I'd be a concert violinist someday. And at each of the things, the whole straight A mentality meant that you can do what you want to do, but it didn't allow me to care that much about what I was doing. And so you could say that there wasn't any intensity of anything but effort.
Would you say that you had a moment, like an aha moment, where you realized, okay, I can be me? Or do you think it was just a gradual progression of coming into your own?
I think most people, and I would be included, have various such moments. Although, from the point of view of my new life as a poet, the carpal tunnel revelation and heading to the computer and saying, I'm going to play the violin on the keyboard, that has to be the most important for my recent life.
Okay, great. Well, look, this has been wonderful. Much more than I could have anticipated.
Oh, thank you.
I've learned so much. Our listeners and viewers are going to learn so much.
That's the point about being 75 years old. Supposedly it's best to be a youthful poet, but I can't see why.
No, and please keep doing what you're doing. But one last question before I do let you go, and that is, what do you want your legacy to be?
Well, Goethe, a favorite of mine, the greatest of German poets, once said, they don't build monuments for people, or they don't need to. There's no need to construct monuments for people who have built their own monument. So my goal in life is to get into the real world, with marketable world, all the books that I still have it in me to write, at least half of which are already written.
Awesome. Well, you're doing a wonderful service to the world. I'm just so honored to know you, and welcome to the American Real family. You are part of it now, and I hope to see much more of you in the future.
Oh, thank you.
And I can't wait to share this episode.
You are one of my most valued mentors.
The feeling is so mutual. Thank you, Martin. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning into American Real. Be sure to visit our website, AmericanReal.tv, or search for us on iTunes or YouTube for past episodes. While you're there, please rate us or leave us a review, as that helps others find our show. I am truly grateful and appreciate all of your support. At American Real, we're on a mission to help as many people around the world fulfill their dreams and obtain their goals. If you'd like to be part of our inner circle or want one-on-one coaching, check out the American Real Learning Academy, where we have self-help groups and courses so you can build the best you. We also have a new Facebook group where you can connect with high achievers from around the world. If you want to go even further, maybe you're determined to write your own book or launch your own podcast, contact me today to see if we could help. You can reach me through Instagram or Facebook, or email me directly at roger@americanreal.tv. And speaking of podcasting, our next course will be starting soon. So, if you're interested in launching your own podcast, join me and Podcast Your Passion. I'll take you through my 8-week course where I'll mentor you to build a world-class podcast. I'm only taking on a small group of people who want to share their passion through broadcasting, where I'll have you up on iTunes and YouTube within weeks so you can podcast your passion. Click on the link below for more information. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.